You're listening to Stories Behind the Songs with Chris Blair. For more information, check out chrisblair.com. In this episode, I got to fly to Chicago, Illinois to sit down with very dear friend Jim Peterik. I've known Jim for over 15 years. We've gotten to write together. He is the guy behind iconic bands like Survivor and Ides of March. He's also an incredible songwriter. He's written songs for 38 Special, Lynyrd Skynyrd, Black Hawk, Cheap Trick, Sammy Hagar, REO Speedwagon, The Beach Boys, so many more. He's an incredible guy. We're going to sit down and we're going to talk about story behind the song Vehicle that he wrote for Ides of March, the story behind the iconic Eye of the Tiger that was in the movie Rocky, how just out of high school, they ended up at a party that you just have to hear the story to find out what happened, and that phone call that changed his life from Sylvester Stallone. Here is my friend, Mr. Eye of the Tiger himself, Jimbo Peterik. Hey everybody, this is Chris Blair here with another episode of Stories Behind the Song, and I am so honored to be in Chicago, Illinois today, sitting down with dear friend of mine, Jim Peterik, the legend. Jim, how are you, buddy?
I'm great, man. I'm flying high, on a great show last night.
Man, that was incredible. So, thank you so much for the invite, by the way.
Oh, you're welcome. I wanted you to see what we do. This was a Jim Peterik and Friends show, which is basically Jim Peterik and the Ides of March and my son Colin. And packed house, and it was very much like your place, listening room, where everybody's quiet.
It was. It was a great crowd. Everybody was listening.
And they were listening and then applauding and standing up. It was really a great night.
It was great to come in a day early and get to see, and you and I have known each other for, 12 years, maybe something like that now.
Even more, I think.
Yeah, probably more. But I had never met the rest of the guys,
right.
And to be able to meet, 4 of the original 5 with the new guy. Talk about the new guy. 32 years that he's been with the band. But he's the new guy.
32 years. Well, yeah, we're a family. We really are. And as you can see, the vibe is so good among us. We never have a bad show. Even if we make mistakes, there's no such thing as a bad show with the Ides of March because we're having too much fun.
Yeah. Well, so the idea here is I want to go back to the beginning. I want to let's dig into Jim Peterik, the songwriter, the art, all of that. So tell me when do you remember that you knew without a doubt that music was what you had to do for
Wow. Well, my sisters taught me how to play ukulele, and all the way down to Florida every year we would go down to visit relatives, and I'd have and they would be playing their ukuleles, and when I was 4 years old, teach me how to play that ukulele, that thing, that guitar, little guitar. And so they were great teachers, Janice and Al San. Janice has passed away, but Al San is still with us, and I just love my sisters. But the good times we had in the back seat of the 1952 Chrysler New Yorker, pretty fancy ride, and playing, just the camp songs, Go Tell Aunt Rhody, and just stuff like that. And I learned to love music at that time.
Yeah. So then did you study music, or did you just pick up a guitar and start playing?
Good question. I took about a minute of piano lessons before I learned enough to say, goodbye, Mr. Ulrich, I don't need you anymore. I was about 8, 9 years old. It was just boring. Scales, I didn't want to learn scales. I still don't really read music. I can follow along, but that's not my thing. I'm an ear listener. Yeah. I learn by ear. It's never failed me, so that's the way I do it.
Yeah, I'd say it's working pretty good for you.
This episode is brought to you by Brit Skin Beauty. Located in the beautiful Indulgence Medi Spa in Mount Juliet, Tennessee, Brittany is the go-to esthetician for facials, dermaplaning, microdermabrasion, waxing, lashes, and any skincare products and consultations. So many people in the music industry use her frequently, and her work speaks for itself. To schedule your next consultation or make an appointment, visit britskinbeauty.com or send an email to britskinbeauty@gmail.com.
So then, you've got all this going on and brewing inside of you, and then take me into your high school years.
Yeah. Well, I've known Larry, Bob, Mike since 1961. We went to grade school together. All the original 4 members of the Ides of March. So I knew all these guys, and in 8th grade, we played for a PTA meeting and brought down the house and went back to Larry's house and shot pool. We were cool, and gradually we started thinking, man, we should really do this for real, And we put together a band called the Shondells. We had to change our name because Tommy James and the Shondells came along. Damn. But Bob Berglund was reading Shakespeare, and he saw this line, "Beware the Ides of March." He says, "Sounds very evil, doesn't it?" That's our name. So we became the Ides of March. And our first Parrot release was in 1966. It was called "You Wouldn't Listen." And it had the very cool little guitar riff. I told you he was a fool, you wouldn't listen to me. It was just very Curtis Mayfield meets the Hollies,
Yeah, man.
And we got a taste of it. Went to number 1 in Chicago, number 42 on the Billboard charts, and we're like 15 and 16 years old. Suddenly we're on the road with the Allman Brothers. Before they were the Allman Brothers, they were the Allman Joys.
Really? I didn't know that.
The Allman Joys, and we played with them in Florida at a few clubs, and we sat there just gobsmacked at how good Dwayne Allman was, and Greg Allman was on B3, and Dwayne was playing the slide guitar, and we never saw anyone really playing a slide guitar before. And it was just very inspirational. And then we decided we loved the soul bands, the James Brown, all the Memphis horns. We wanted horns. And we got 1 trumpet player, then we got 2, then we added a sax. Before you know it, we had a whole brass section. And that became the nucleus of our biggest hit, Vehicle, which came out in 1970, went to number 1 in Cashbox number 2 on Billboard. And we were still only 18, 19 years old. And we're on the road with the Allman Brothers, for real. And how many other Brownsville Station and crazy bands, Apricot Brandy by, you have to look Apricot Brandy up, Rhinoceros, thank you. And of course, Led Zeppelin.
Wow.
And Jimi Hendrix. We played with all these bands.
Janis, right?
Janis.
Yeah.
Well, Janis was a very special thing because we opened for her.
Yeah.
And she was up there with her great band. And she was swigging from that Southern Comfort the whole set and singing her butt off, or I can say ass in this
Yeah,
podcast.
it's podcast. You can say whatever you want.
Yeah. And but gradually, she started getting pretty inebriated, and she was wandering around backstage and couldn't find her hotel. Well, I knew we were staying at the same hotel, so arm in arm, I led Janis Joplin back to her Holiday Inn, and I'll never forget it because she was so sweet, giving me a kiss on the cheek, and what a sweet soul.
Yeah. Man, I love that. So Vehicle takes off. Then, how was it? I heard you guys talking a little bit about, was it called The Cellar? Do I remember that right?
Yeah, The
Yeah,
Cellar.
so when all of this, that was around the same time, right? When all of that's taken off, you guys are playing this, I didn't know anything about it until last night when we were hanging, but sounds like this underground club, right?
Yeah.
That talk about that.
Well, it was in Arlington Heights, and for us guys from Berwyn, this is like another planet. And we thought the people were so exotic and so tie-dyed out and long hair, and we're like with our short hair and stuff. And we were blown away by The Cellar. And the place was packed. We opened up for Saturday's Children. It was their first gig ever. And if you don't know Saturday's Children, look them up because they're one of the seminal Chicago bands. But and then they moved to a bigger quarters, The Cellar did. And that's when we played with different bands that, made it later. Apricot Brandy, that band, Rhinoceros, Jimi Hendrix. They got everybody there.
The Who?
The Who, yeah. Who else? Man, the Cellar got everybody there. But that was a much bigger venue, like 2,000 people could jam in there on a good night, and the walls would be sweating.
Yeah.
It was like the Beatles playing at the Cavern, It was that funky.
Man, how cool. So then as Vehicle's taken off, where was your head? Like, was it just everything was happening so fast? Like, you guys are, right out of high school, basically. And you're touring all over the place. Like, what?
Yeah. Well, we were still those clean-cut kids from Berwyn.
Yeah.
And we never really changed that. And when we opened for Led Zeppelin, Robert Plant came to us afterwards and said, you got to come in to our party, And we said, sounds good, cake and ice cream. Different kind of party.
Yeah.
So we knock on the door, and Robert Plant answers the door in his little bikini briefs, and that was fine. Come on in, lads. And we look behind, and there's groupies having pillow fights, naked groupies, by the way, or just in panties and a bra. And we go, well, this isn't not your father's party. And I went into the bathroom to relieve myself, and there was Bonzo in the bathtub and a groupie performing some very unusual water sports above him. And I said, well, I'll find another restroom. It's okay. It's okay.
Wow.
And that was our first real, inoculation to the star thing.
Yeah.
And we knew what that was, and we knew we didn't really want to be that. Mm-hmm. And so we very politely told Robert Plant, this is not our scene. We'll see you later. And we went across the street to Dunkin' Donuts, and we had the donuts and milk.
Yeah.
And we were back in our comfort zone. Man, call it corny, call it whatever you want. We're still here, and we're still talking to you.
Yes. It's almost 60 years, right? Next year, 60 years.
60 years. The same four guys.
Wow.
And
Incredible.
Scott's been with us now for 32.
Yeah.
You met Scott.
Yep.
The one-armed orchestra, we call him.
Yeah.
Because he does it all with just one hand, and just, it's a killer.
And man, I tell you, from someone that gets to listen to great music on a nightly basis, sitting back in the back of that room last night, Hey Nani, and listening to you guys just jam it out in harmonies, you still got it, brother. It was awesome.
Thank you. I mean, we should by now. But that it's ironic you say that, but really a lot of bands lose it, you know, and they either have quarrels or their voices are shot or drugs, and that never got in our way.
Yeah.
The Ides are still a family. I thank the Lord every day for having this team of supporters and friends like the Ides of March.
Amen. Yeah, for everybody listening, Larry is in the room with us right now, and I think it was, if I remember, I think it was Larry that was talking last night that said that everybody up there on that stage was his best friend, and it's just someone that's been in bands before and heard all the stories of other friends that have been on the road and living like that. The fact that almost 60 years later, you guys are still best friends, are still tearing it up together on stage. It's just incredible.
It's a really great story. And, I took 17 years off exactly from the Ides of March, and I created a band called Survivor.
Yeah.
And that was an amazing part of my life, but it was never the family like the Ides of March. Mm-hmm. Very successful band, obviously.
Right.
And Frankie and I had a really good writing, especially songwriting chemistry. We'd get in a room and we would just bounce back and forth like, Lennon and McCartney, although we weren't quite that big. But we had a lot of fun writing songs. And sometimes it was just a little lick that he played, and I took it from there, like, I never knew there'd come a day when I'd be saying to you, don't let this let's go, and it was just pretty magnetic.
Yeah. Yeah. So let's go. Let's dig into one of those songs. I don't care which one. We can go back to Ides and talk about Vehicle, but you write most of the music for all the bands that you've been involved in. But so let's maybe Vehicle or whatever. Let's go through the how you came up with that lyric.
Right. Well, Vehicle was really a landmark in our career. And, I was dating this girl named Karen, and we met at a Turtles concert because we loved the Turtles. I love them. They love. She was in the line with a gaggle of great-looking girls, but there was one girl that was just rising above the other very hot girls, and I'm in my pea coat and I'm looking at her, going, I'm trying to see down her blouse, as we always did, and that was a good view. But anyway. I said to myself, this is a typical stuck-up Riverside Brookfield girl. She'll never talk to me. And just then she turned around and said, aren't you Peterik? And I go, last time I looked, yeah. And I said to God above, there is a God, thank you. And we ended up sitting together at the Turtles concert. And about halfway through Happy Together, she puts her culotte leg on top of mine, and her girlfriends go, Karen, what are you doing? And Karen says, it's all right, I trust him. And, well, that might have been a mistake, but I was very trustworthy.
Yeah.
And we started dating, but then she dumped me. And I was heartbroken. I was on the road with the Ides of March, and I want to play the blues. Well, my baby left me,
Yeah.
Like, what are you guys doing? What are you doing, Jim? Come on, we're an up-tempo fun band. And I said, well, Karen left me, and I'm just really in a bad state. So I kind of had to get over that. But I wrote this song because she started calling me for rides. And she would call me and say, Jim, this isn't a date, but I need a ride to modeling school. She was at Patricia Stevens Modeling School in Oak Park. But it's not a date. I said, that's fine. I figured if I'm next to her, maybe I could get a kiss or a little nookie or whatever. Well, that never happened. And I waited for an hour and a half at modeling school, took her back home. She shook my hand and said, that's very nice, Jim. Let's do this again. I go, yeah. So 2 weeks go by, and I'm taking her to Patricia Stevens. No nookie, no nothing. And at that point, I'm starting to feel a little bit used, And I said to myself, all I am is your vehicle, baby. And bingo, vehicle, what a cool word. It hasn't been used as far as I know. So I started writing the song, with this riff. Ba-da-ba-ba-da. Wow, this cool horn riff just came into my head. And I used to have a lab partner named Bill Greiner, and he was a stoner. And he was like baked every day in biology. And one day he came with a pamphlet it's an anti-drug pamphlet, and it had a little cartoon called The Friendly Stranger. And it was this guy with his hand out the window to a little child, the friendly stranger. And I go, the friendly stranger, that's really evil, but kind of cool. And the first line I wrote was, I'm the friendly stranger in the black sedan. Won't you hop inside my car?
Yeah.
Bingo, here we go. And I called a rehearsal at Larry's house, got the brass there, and we worked it out on the spot. It was our own head arrangement for the horns. I had the lick, but all the band members chipped in with the harmonies of the harmonies in the horns. Mm-hmm. And I remember little Tommy, neighborhood guy, sitting there watching us with his mouth open, could not believe what he was hearing. In fact, we couldn't believe what we were hearing. We went into the studio, the CBS studios, and we did the first 16-track session at the studio. And the main engineer left for the train home. The second engineer was there, and inadvertently he erased 13 seconds of the master, a vehicle. And Larry can tell the story better than I, but Larry stuck around, and we had take one. This was take two that they erased it. Yeah. That was our magic take. And Larry says, well, let's just go back to take one and see if we could splice it in. And the engineer goes, that'll never work. I mean, you're not on a click track. Forget it. Try it. So they took that 13 seconds and notched it in. Perfect. And history was saved. I'll never forget that. But I'm going to get a sip of water, and then I'm going to play a little of this song.
All right, let's do it. Sounds good.
But you got to be the horn section.
Okay, I got you.
All right, you ready?
Let's go.
1, 2, ba-da-ba-ba-da. Then it goes ba-ba-da-ba-ba-da. Ba-ba-da-ba-ba-da. Hey, well, I'm the friendly stranger in the black sedan. Won't you hop inside my car? I got pixies, got candy, I'm a lover man. Take you to the nearest stop. I'm your vehicle, baby. Take it anywhere you wanna go. I'm your vehicle, woman. By now I'm sure you know that I love you, I need you, I want you, got to have your child. Great God in heaven, you know I love you. Ba-ba-da-ba-ba-da. Well, if you want to be a movie star, I'll take you to Hollywood. But if you want to stay just like you are, you know, I think you really should. I'm your vehicle, baby. Take it anywhere you want to go.